Hey, this video is to help you with the art criticism packet if you weren't here or you just need to make up a part of the packet. Art criticism is a process that we go through to evaluate works of art. And the essential questions for today are: how can viewers understand an artwork if they've never seen it or don't know anything about it? And then how do I determine if an artwork is successful? Learning the steps of art criticism will allow you to be able to evaluate works of art yourself. When you've learned the different aesthetic theories for judging an artwork, you will be able to form your own opinions about works of art with self-confidence. So why do we study art criticism? Well, by setting criteria for looking at an artwork, we make studying art less mysterious and more logical. Thinking about the art you are looking at improves your skills of perception and therefore improves your artistic abilities. Learning art criticism will allow you to discuss a work of art with confidence. So today we're going to have a basic introduction to art criticism, know what it is and why we do it, and go through this first steps. So I'll walk you through the entire packet in this video. You can just obviously break it up as you need to. Okay, so if you've ever recommended a new song to a friend, if you have, you were judging the music and making decisions about why it was a success and not a failure. You were acting as a critic. If you've ever become so absorbed in watching a movie that you forgot about the passing of time or moved to tears because of a song, you were having an aesthetic experience. So that's what the study of aesthetics is all about: understanding what it is about a painting, a song, a poem, a play, etc. that causes us to have a reaction or an aesthetic experience. So we just went through why we do the steps of art criticism. There's a quote here by the artist Marcel Duchamp. All in all, the creative act is not formed by the artist alone. The spectator, or the viewer, brings the work in contact with the external world by deciphering and interpreting its inner qualifications and thus adding their contribution to the creative act. That means that's not just about what the artist meant to express with the artwork. It's also about what you, the viewer, bring to the experience of viewing it. So part of talking about art is talking about aesthetics, and that's the philosophy or the study of the nature and value of art. We ask questions like, what is art? What's the function of art in our world? How do we decide what good art is? And part of talking about aesthetics is talking about an artwork style. So we've already talked about styles this semester. We've talked about three general ones. Naturalism is when the artwork aims to represent its subject as it appears in real life. So the artist is trying to make it look realistic. Abstract is when you can still tell what the artwork is supposed to be depicting, but it's just the concept of it. It's not trying to look realistic. It's maybe left out details, maybe things are exaggerated or distorted. Non-objective art is art that has no recognizable subject matter. It's just an arrangement of lines, shapes, maybe blobs of color. It's not supposed to look like any things. We also talk about subject matter. Subject matter is what the focus of the artwork is. So like what's being depicted. If it's a picture of a person or another living creature, it's a portrait. If it's a picture that the artist made of him or herself, it's a self-portrait. If it's an arrangement of non-living objects, it's a still life. And if it's an outdoor scene, it's a landscape. If it's a picture of a city, it's a cityscape. If it's like a picture of the ocean, it's a seascape. So these are the 4 steps that we're going to go through with the art criticism process. So it's common to assume that criticism is negative, but it can actually be positive. Art criticism is an organized system of studying a work of art that can vary in degrees of positive as well as negative remarks. Art critics use different criteria or standards of judgment to assess works of art. By using some of these same criteria, you can learn to interpret works of art. The process of interpretation will improve your aesthetic experience or your personal interaction with a work of art. An art critique is made up of 4 steps that should be done in order. So first step is description, then analysis, interpretation, and judgment. Each step should provide clues that help you discover more about the next question. Critiquing artwork can be like solving a mystery. Follow these 4 steps and follow the clues to solve the mystery behind the artwork. The mysterious artwork that we are going to be looking at is called Christina's World by the artist Andrew Wyeth. So we're going to begin collecting clues by using the 4 steps of art criticism, starting with description. So this is a full image of the painting, and you can come back to that in the slides presentation whenever you need to. And I've included some close-ups as well of some of the painting, just so you can see it a little bit more up close. So on this page in your packet description, we're going to start here. This is the treasure hunting part of the critique. Here you will find clues to the meaning of the artwork. First, write down the information found in the credit line. This is all listed on page 4, and it's also up on the in the slides presentation if you want to just go back to that. So you need to write down the artist, title, date, medium, size, and location. This gives us important facts about the artwork. And then we should also make a note about the subject matter and the style of the artwork. So you can just write that kind of at the top of the exploding cloud thing. Second, we're going to mentally divide the artwork into the foreground, middle ground, and background. And we're going to carefully examine all the details in each section and describe what you see. So make a list of the details. Pretend someone has to recreate the artwork based on your description. So in that little box area, you're going to start, make sure you write down the subject matter and the style that you noticed about this painting. And then just make a note of foreground. That means everything pretty much from the figure down to the bottom of the painting. That's the stuff that's supposed to be closest to us in the as the viewer. Just start making a list of everything you see. No assumptions. Just make a list of what you notice, and just get more and more specific as you can. So this is kind of like if you were a police officer at a crime scene, just, writing down all the things that you observe, and whether or not we know if it's important or not, just make a list. And then move to the middle ground. That's kind of from like the top of her head, kind of back towards like the fence. Just make a list of what you see there. There's only so much you'll have to list. And then the background, which is the top of the painting, make a list of that. So the idea is you're describing this painting so that we understand what we're looking at. So go ahead. If you're watching this video, you can pause and go ahead and do that step before you move on. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the second step. Okay, so now we are at analysis. This is where we ask, how is the work organized? So this is where we are finding out how the artist used the elements of art and principles of design to organize the artwork. So how did the artist use the tools and rules of art to get his or her meaning across? So you have all of the elements of art and principles of design listed on page 6, and you're going to go through those and think about where you see each one in the artwork. And you're going to do it for all the elements of art and all the principles of design. You might not have a whole lot to say about each one, but for example, if we start with line, we want to look at the painting. Our first question is, did the artist use lines in this artwork? If the answer is yes, I want you to tell me like where, and you can just jot down words like, line of the fence, or the tracks going through the grass, or the line where the grass looks like it's been mowed, or the horizon line. Keep in mind that there are sometimes implied lines that are maybe someone's sight line or their body position, things like that. So go through each of those, and think about, what they mean. That's why the definitions are in there. And then it's not just a yes or no if they used it or not. It's tell me how or where they used it. Okay. At the bottom of page 7, it asks you to tell me what you think. Which element of art or principles of design do you think is most effectively used or used the most? So out of all of those, which one did you have the most to say about? So which one is used a lot? And once you're finished with that, you're done with the analysis section. Okay, now we are moving on to interpretation of the painting. So this is where we ask ourselves, what is the artist saying? Why did he or she create this piece? What is its purpose? Though sometimes said to be non-functional, art is expected to function in various ways. You should start thinking about what you noticed in steps 1 and 2, and whether you think this means it's fine art or applied art. To help determine this, you need to examine its purpose. The purpose refers to the intended use or function of an object. What kind of message or purpose do the clues from your description and analysis point to? In art, there are 5 general purposes behind any artwork: personal, social, physical, spiritual, or educational. So first of all, fine art is art that is primarily aesthetic. That means it's just meant to be looked at. Applied art is decoration or design of everyday items that make them aesthetically pleasing. So something you can actually do something with, like a really neat woven like basket, whereas a fine art would just be like a painting where it just hangs on the wall and you're just meant to look at it. Okay, so the 5 purposes of art are, number 1, personal. This is when an artist creates art to express personal feelings or tell personal stories. This is oftentimes what artwork is created for. Second reason is social. Artists may produce art to reinforce and enhance the shared sense of identity or those in a family, community, or civilization. This is more like public art, like when maybe a statue is put up in a town to help kind of reinforce the town's, community values. Think like Statue of Liberty, right? That's there to kind of help reinforce our sense of American values. Spiritual is when artists create artwork to express spiritual beliefs. A lot of times we find artwork like this in churches. Physical is when artists or craftspeople invent new ways to create functional art, so stuff you can do something with that's aesthetically pleasing and it has some sort of like function. And then educational art is when the art can teach us something. So in the past, many people could not read, and art was often created to provide visual instructions. So, and when we look at art from the past, we can learn it from it. So, artwork can serve an educational purpose, can teach us something about the past or about what we think, is important in life. Okay, so now you're going to go through these 5 purposes on page 9 and decide which one do you think Christina's world is? Do you think the artist created it for a personal reason, social reason, spiritual, physical, or educational? So on page 9, you're going to circle which one you think it is right here, and then tell me why you chose that, explain your answer. And then below that, you get to write your interpretation. What do you think this painting is about? Write at least 4 sentences. So I'm giving you some sentence starters if you don't know what to start with. This is your personal interpretation. So some ideas to start your artwork or to start writing might be, this painting reminds me of blah, 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 blah. I think this painting is about the feeling, blah, blah, blah. When I look at this artwork, the story I read from it goes like this. So make sure you write about 4 sentences for that. And then you're finished with the interpretation part. We've got one more step. Okay, here is the judgment phase of the artwork. So this is where we ask, is this a successful work of art? Should you use to determine if it is successful? Aesthetics was once concerned with judging the physical beauty of artworks, but it is now used to determine whether an artwork is successful. As aestheticians who are specialists in aesthetics look at the literal qualities or the design qualities or the expressive qualities of works of art. So these aesthetic theories that rate these different qualities most highly are called imitationalism, formalism, and emotionalism. So imitationalism means that artwork is successful if it looks like the real world. So it looks realistic. It imitates the real world. Formalism emphasizes the elements of art and principles of design. The composition is the most important factor. Formalism places emphasis on the design qualities. So judge whether or not the artwork is successful due to how well the artist uses the elements of art and principles of design. Emotionalism expresses feelings. The content or the expressive quality of the work is the most important. Emotionalism requires a strong communication of feelings, moods, or ideas for the work to be successful. According to this theory, no object can be successful art if it fails to send a message. Strong message equals success. You can also use the 4 steps of art criticism to judge functional objects, but in your interpretation, you should consider the purpose of the object as its meaning. Then, to judge whether the object is successful, you can ask whether it works correctly in addition to being beautiful. So functionalism means it serves a purpose in society or a culture. Does it work correctly and does it have an aesthetic quality to it? Okay, so for each of those aesthetic theories on page 11, you're going to decide, would you judge Christina's World a success or not a success? So you're going to circle the thumbs up or the thumbs down and then explain your answer. So you can go back on page 10 to the explanation for each of the theories and tell me, according to that theory, would Christina's World be judged successful or not successful? And there can be more, than one successful one and not successful one. This is kind of a personal opinion based on the visual evidence and based on what you did on the previous pages. Okay, so there's an image of Christina's World again if you need it. Okay, on page 12, we're going to take a little break from Christina's World and use those aesthetic theories to talk about another painting, this one called The Tragedy by Pablo Picasso. So your job is to figure out which of the art critics, what aesthetic theory they use. So according to so keep in mind this painting, you can come back to it. So the first art critic talks about successful art imitating what we see in real life. So I'll let you read that quote and decide which critic that is. Is it an imitationalist, a formalist, or an emotionalist? Okay, do the same thing for the next art critic. Read his quote and decide which kind of aesthetic theory they use to judge if artwork is successful or not. And the last one, same thing. Okay, so going back to The Tragedy down at the bottom of page 12, what qualities or which aesthetic theory do you think would judge this painting a success? So you tell me what you think and then what qualities of this painting make it successful according to that theory. And then underneath that, you're explaining what do you think Pablo Picasso's purpose was behind this work? Why did he paint this painting? What is the message? What is the purpose? You can kind of check back on page 8 for those purposes. Okay. This is the last page, page 13. This is just a review. Page 4 in your packet is going to be really helpful for the review part. So going through and reviewing what was step 1, what was step 2, what was step 3, and what was step 4. So you're going to write down the step, what question you ask yourself, and then if you were going to write this out in a paragraph, what kinds of things would you be writing about? I'm not asking you to actually write it out there on page 13. I'm just saying, what would you write about in this paragraph? You would do something like, I would describe what I see in the painting. So on analysis, I would address how the artist used the elements of art and principles of design. Okay, step 3 and step 4. And once you're finished with that, you are completely done with the packet. Good job.